So, talk about coming into the game late. I have no excuses except for the fact that I'm human and have other things to do. This time last year, Vanderrollcraft of Hot Elf Boy doll fame put together a collaboration themed around the Autumn Fairy Court. Their creation for the project, King Taliesin, was hosting, and collaborator dolls were meant to be attendees of the festivities. B and I jumped on the opportunity to put together a funky, high fantasy character, especially because we had a funky new kind of doll to play with. This, I'm pretty sure, is a BTS doll, which we found at a local thrift shop. He's got the sort of slender features generally associated with fae creatures, and was one of the few male dolls we had in our stock box.
Man, the tidy whities on this guy.
You know.
He felt like the perfect candidate for a fancy lad going to the ball, even with the few scuffs and marker stains he had on him. B and I both knew that given the autumn theme, most characters were probably going to be going with some kind of red/orange/yellow/brown motif. So I said, hey, why don't we base this character around the last dregs of autumn? Why don't we give him November vibes? We pulled out some dark browns and silvery grays from the fabric bin, which we felt like conveyed more of the November darkness and coolness that comes around once the days get shorter and the temperatures lower. This shimmery fabric is the same we used for Moffy's wings, and incredibly, I found this rabbit pelts at the thrift store for $3. So naturally, I wanted to include its colors into the motif too. $3! We had these feathers in our craft stock too, and B quite liked the pop of orange in them, so set to work sewing them individually onto the outside of our doll's cloak. We didn't want him to feel too wintry, after all. I, meanwhile, got to work on the face-up. These dolls are notorious for having hard-to-remove features. Their face-ups are sort of a dot matrix sticker that's pressed onto the final heads instead of painted on, so there was a lot of scrubbing and acetone involved in getting it back to brass tacks. Once that was cleaned off, I got to sanding down all the raised factory info and seam lines on the doll's body. These things drive me nuts anyway. They feel distracting from the finished product, and this guy was going to have a lot of skin showing, so I wanted to naturalize his body as much as possible.
How's the sanding going?
He's having a great time.
He's getting exfoliated real good.
That meant, of course, that I had to get rid of his tidy whities. This would have taken a million years to sand off manually, so I switched to power tools. I periodically rinsed the dude off to get rid of the dust and see just how deep I dug into the plastic. It's really easy to warp things, as the plastic is prone to melting under the speed of the sander, so you really want to take your time and double check all your edits as you go. It also has the bonus of making him look like a model, too. Once the canvas was prepped, I put the pastels to him. We wanted one side of our character to look cold and ice-crusted, like tree branches do after an ice storm, while the other side would be more warm-toned and protected under his cloak. The dry texture of his body after sanding and spray of Mr. Superclear did help the pastels stick to some extent, but I still had to do several layers to get the color as bumped up as I wanted them to be. I know these are the pastels that Delightful gets by on, but I would not recommend them. They never want to stick. RIP for those of you who like watching face-up processes, because apparently I didn't film that at all.
How about that?
Despite having a good month and a half to make these dolls, we were more or less putting this guy together in a couple days, so I wasn't on my filming game. I mainly put watercolor pencils and pastels to him, and then filled in all the white of his eye with a marker. The hair color the doll came with was already working pretty well for what we wanted, a short cut of browns and blacks, so I just shortened up the do, swept it sideways, and then went to town brushing it with white acrylic paint on one side to make it look like there were ice crystals through it. You ever been out in weather cold enough to watch your hair freeze? I've got distinct memories of waiting for the school bus in November and seeing everyone's eyebrows and bangs go white. One of the stipulations of the collab was that the characters all had to have masks, because they were going to a masquerade ball. I thought it'd be cool to have this guy's mask look like it was made of ice, so I grabbed for some scraps of clear Warbler I'd gotten in a sample package, and 2 shades of fairy film. I sketched out the glasses shape with a marker, ski goggles, cut it down to size, and then very carefully warmed it with a heat gun so I could bend the shape around the doll's face. Then, using PVC glue, I affixed the plastic to the mask. I had leftover shards of fairy film anyway, so I decided to scrumble up sheets of it to make ice crystals that I could affix to the doll's air-exposed frosty limbs. These I started applying with PVC glue, but they weren't sticking too well, so I switched to hot glue, which was faster and looked pretty icy itself. I lumped most of the film around the doll's hand and foot, and made it more sparing towards the warmer center of his body. These fun confetti bits I took from the table at my dad's birthday party because I felt like their holographic sheen would work perfectly for our frosty guy. I cut the flower shapes into smaller bits and then used tweezers to add them to the right side of the body. They really bumped up the iridescence on that side and helped hide the worst of the rough fairy film ends. B made this gorgeous beaded half corset and pants for the doll. He needed some clothing detail to look appropriately fancy for the dance party, after all. And then I dry brushed the whole right side with white paint to keep the frosty theme going. This was a very trust the process moment. I didn't want to mess up all B's hard work. I added the white to the inside of the cloak on the right side too, and then across the doll's skin as well. The very last touch was adding the rabbit fur to the top of the cloak as a cowl, which conveniently hid all the feather ends and made the whole outfit more wintry. Because we're very serious people who understand a theme, we named this doll Jeff Freeze, the patron saint of the last dregs of autumn, that transitional November period after all the bright oranges and reds, but before his brother Jack Frost's delightful winter crispiness. Jeff is a bit of a wet blanket, a surly type A sort of guy, mostly because he feels his work is underappreciated in everyone's rush from Halloween month golds to deep winter blues. The film on the glasses accidentally obscure his brown eye more than his frosted one, and have this funky anime-esque ski goggle look to them, which we figured gave him more silly teenager energy, and is half the reason we named him Jeff instead of something more quintessentially elven. If you'd like to see more of the collab pieces, be sure to check out the #AutumnCourtCollab2022 tag on Instagram, and stay tuned for more super belated doll videos here. Thanks so much for watching this. If you'd like to see more of our dolls, you can find videos in this channel's doll customization playlist, and or check out Rhino B Dolls on Instagram. Kisses to anyone leaving likes or comments and substubing, and I will see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye!